Hello, everyone. My name is Bongshin. I'm a senior principal researcher at Microsoft Research. This work started as an intern project of the first author, Yea-Seul. Unfortunately, she couldn't come join us, so I'm going to present on behalf of the team, which consists of Microsoft Research, University of Washington, and Northwestern University. It is helpful to externalize our thoughts during exploratory data analysis. The analyst can write down observations to offload cognitive burden or questions to revisit them later. Despite many empirical studies that show the benefits of externalization, we have little knowledge in people's externalization behaviors in the context of data analysis. So, we set out to understand when and how people externalize their thoughts and how they use these externalizations during exploratory data analysis with these research questions in mind. In this project, we were interested in understanding the differences in externalization behavior with respect to different data analysis stages. How people refer to the aspects of visualization in their externalizations, and how the affordance of different input modalities affects people's externalization behaviors. To address these questions, we conducted two exploratory studies. In the first study, we observed how participants externalize their thoughts during an exploratory data analysis. And we asked the participant to use a visualization recommendation system with mouse and keyboard. And from the observations in the first study and the literature, we derived some opportunities to improve users' externalization experience. And in our second study, we explored the feasibility of these two opportunities. And this time, we asked the participant use a visualization recommendation system with pen and touch. So we recruited 10 participants and have them complete both studies to limit inter-subject variability. And the two studies conducted about a week apart on average. We asked participants to complete a post-analysis questionnaire once the analysis is done in both studies, and ask them to complete an externalization experience questionnaire after they completed both studies. So in this project, we wanted to minimize the burden of creating visualizations so that our participants could focus on understanding and observing the data. So in both studies, we added necessary features to Voyager 2, which is a visualization recommendation system that also allows a partial manual specification. And as I mentioned before, we wanted to understand differences in externalization behavior with respect to different data analysis stages. So in both studies, we broke the process into 3 phases. In the first phase, participants browse the data set and check the data quality. In the second formulating questions phase, participants generated questions about the data. And finally, in the answering questions phase, participants answered specific questions that we provided for consistency across participants. So for the first study, we added the basic annotation support in our study prototype called VoyagerNote to allow the analyst to type in text annotation at the desired location. And here, the main input modalities were mouse and keyboard, and we asked participants to use external note-taking tools they like, which included pen and paper. And we defined externalization as anything and everything participant wrote down or drew with the analog pen, digital pen, or keyboard. And we had two categories of externalizations, annotation and note. Annotations are the externalization that were made on top of or near the visualization. And notes are the externalizations that were made in a separate medium, such as the paper, Word document, or note canvas in our prototypes. And to measure the frequency of annotations and notes, we also defined the unit of externalization. And for textual externalizations, we considered one sentence as one externalization. And some sentences were not complete, but we still counted each incomplete sentence as one externalization as well. And for graphical externalizations, one symbol or shape was considered as one externalization. And here are some examples of how we counted externalizations. And here are some results from the first study. So among 10 participants, 6 chose to use pen and paper for their external medium to take notes. 3 chose to use Microsoft Word. And 1 participant chose both pen and paper and Microsoft Word. We observed a total of 152 externalizations, and 75.5% were notes, and the rest was annotations. And now here are some results by data analysis phase. So in this first familiarization phase, about a half of externalizations were annotations. And participants mentioned that creating annotations was advantageous because taking notes in a separate medium could be distracting. And the annotations were about the distribution of the data or the correlation between two data fields. We also observed that some participants write down the name of data fields or with a pen on paper. And some annotations contain the definition of data fields in the participants' own words. We think that the act of externalization was to internalize the new information they encountered. In the second formulating questions phase, all externalizations were notes. And we observed many revisitation behaviors in this phase, and participants looked up the externalizations they had created previously. And some revisitations were to gather findings from prior annotations to formulate the question, and some were to check whether the question they formulated was aligned with the new discovery. And one participant mentioned that the act of externalizations itself helped with the brainstorming, especially when using a pen and paper. And similar to phase 2, in phase 3, most externalizations were notes, and participants generated longer notes than phase 1. We also observed several instances where participants referenced the visualization in their notes, and oftentimes participants did it by copying and pasting visualizations into Word document where the notes were in. So based on our observations and the literature, we derived opportunities to facilitate externalization during the exploratory data analysis. As for the inking, we identified 3 affordances of the pen that are relevant in the data analysis context. First, we thought that the digital pen will help integrate information in context because participants can just write things and annotate things directly on top of the visualization. And second, we noticed that most annotations that summarize the distribution or correlations can be easily depicted as a shape or mark. Lastly, several participants commented on the benefits of capturing their fleeting thoughts with a pen, and we expected that the digital pen can provide the similar benefits. Many participants expressed the desire to have capabilities to link notes to the relevant visualizations, and we expected that this linking feature will also help the analyst revisit insights and record the context of the insights. So in our second study, we investigated how participants would use this inking and linking support during data analysis. And this time, we built VoyagerInk, which is a study prototype extending Voyager 2 again, to provide digital pen-based freeform externalization as well as touch-based linking between notes and visualizations. And the VoyagerInk interface consists of 2 panes, and the manual specification can be done with shelves, and the recommended visualizations will be shown on the left side, and participants can take notes in the note pane on the right side. With VoyagerInk, participants can explicitly create a link between a note and a visualization in 2 different ways. And I'm going to show you a video, but the quality is not so great, so pay attention. So for the first one, the simultaneous linking, participants can write a note while holding a visualization. And then the link is created. The second way is called retrospective linking. Here, participants can tap a visualization while holding on already written notes. Okay, hope you got that. It's not super difficult, but. And here are some results from the second study. In the second study, participants created a total of 202 externalizations. 54.5% were notes, and the rest was annotations. And here, to analyze the type of annotations participants created, we categorized them into 2 categories, texture and graphical annotations. And most of the annotations were graphical ones. As for the linking, we found that 7 out of 10 participants used explicit linking interactions, and they all used simultaneous linking interaction. No one used the retrospective one. On average, participants created 4.8 explicit links, and around a quarter of notes were linked to 1 or more visualizations. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up. This chart here shows the number of externalizations by phases, by studies, by externalization type, and by annotation type. And the overall trend of study 2 was similar to study 1. Participants made the most annotations in the first phase as well. And in phase 2, in contrast to study 1 with Voyager Notes, we saw the continuous use of annotation with VoyagerInk. In phase 3, fewer externalizations were made with VoyagerInk overall, but more annotations were made with the VoyagerInk compared to Voyager Notes. Now let me briefly reflect on participant linking behavior based on our observation and their feedback. So participants' comments confirmed that pen input was more adequate for quick thoughts, while keyboard input was more appropriate for a long chain of thought. As prior research indicated, participants appreciated the ability to reference only a part of visualization. And our observation also suggests that the inking enables an informal mode of thinking. In general, participants appreciated linking capability for its convenience to revisit the previous insights. But some participants perceived annotations as being ephemeral or disposable. So here are some design implications we derived for future data analysis tools. So given our observations, users will benefit from graphical annotation capabilities, especially in the initial stage of their analysis. And as I just mentioned, some participants worried about graphical annotations may disappear as they interact with the other parts of visualization. So we should think about the way to reassure users. And we did not observe the revisitation behavior as often as we expected, and this might be because of the short duration of the study time, or it could be because of the issue with the interaction design. So it would be important to make it easy to revisit without breaking the analyst's analytical flow. And we think that in the early phase of analysis, externalization specifically helped participants make sense of this unfamiliar data. So more support in the initial stage could improve the overall quality of the exploratory data analysis. As a controlled observation study, our studies have a few limitations. As I mentioned, we imposed these 3 phases on participant data analysis because we wanted to see the difference in their externalization behavior with respect to the data analysis phases. We also conducted as a single session study in a lab and provided the data set. So it would be useful to observe externalization behaviors in a more natural setting. And we studied this externalization behavior with this visualization recommendation system. So it would be useful to observe the behavior using different types of visualization setup. And in this work, we didn't look at the quality of externalization or quality of the analysis. So in the future, the study that could look into these things would be also useful. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions you may have.
We have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Lauren Thomas from LMU Munich. I would have a question about the retrospective linking, because as a user, I would use it, for instance, to link one knot to 2 graphics. So my question was it possible to link one annotation to 2 different graphics, or was a data set not appropriate for linking to different graphics?
Yeah, you can do that as well. And in fact, so for the linking, we kind of see 2 kinds of behavior in that people took notes and then associate with the multiple ones. The other case was more like a storyboarding kind of thing, one viz with one note and series of those things. Yes.
So I'll maybe finish with, nope, Tim has a question.
Of course, Tim.
Hi, Bongshin. That was really nice talk. I'm wondering how complicated these storyboards got, and whether users had the ability to rearrange them, or whether that became too laborious.
Oh, yeah, they could do those things, and we were using a folder metaphor, so people can technically create multiple pages of notes and going back and forth as well. But the session was short and the data set was not super complex, and we gave reasonably simple questions. So it was not crazy complex.
Thank you.
All right, let's thank Bongshin again and all the speakers of this session.
Okay, thank you.